think of it like I like to dance. So I think of it like, having dancing with your partner, right? It's a balance. It's like the ebbs and the flows and how you move. Like sometimes I'm pushing forward and sometimes I'm pulling back. And so being able to do that even in the workspace and in your home life. And I love the conversation and narrative surrounding just the transparency. Because I was the leader whose mom had cancer, sister had cancer, and grandmother at the same exact time. So managing and caring for all of them with a team of 60 people, and then realizing, oh wait, this is not working, And so, coming home as that mom, overwhelmed and trying to just make lunch, crying, making lunch, recognizing that, oh, this is not sustainable. So being the person to recognize, hey, I have to create a safe space even for myself.
Okay.
Being that safe space, recognizing, Marcia, it's okay. You don't have to be superwoman and do all the things. And even, I'll say as a black woman, being one that, I have to perform this way or, show up this way so that people can know that I am worthy, recognizing that you are worthy within yourself, And so, but that takes that introspection and taking that time to be self-aware and giving other people the permission to do the same.
So Marcia, what did that look like for you at work? You said you had to take a breath, take a step back. What did it look like at work?
It looked like me saying, I am taking 6 weeks off. Yes. I'm taking my 30 days of personal leave and 2 weeks of additional time for myself to recognize, hey, what is it that I need in this moment? Getting that therapy, and spending time with my loved ones. And I'm so glad I did. My grandmother passed away, so I got some time to spend with her. But, being there for my mom and my sister's surgery, these are things that when I was managing my team, it was not given as an option, I'll put it that way. It was like, we got things to do, we got it on board. So I was really just overwhelmed. But when I took those 6 weeks off, it was the beginning. It didn't finish, but it was the beginning stages of me just relaxing, becoming just more energetic, sitting with myself, being present with where I needed to be so that I can continue to grow and move forward.
Dare I say pivoting?
Pivoting.
Yes.
I had to pivot. I had to pivot. Had to. It was necessary. Yeah.
Wow. So that really goes into the necessity of good policy.
Yeah.
So that in the rule book, you have the space to find what you need. In addition to the relationships that we're trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just thinking about policies again, like how can an organization know that they have the right policies in place that will allow somebody who could feel overwhelmed for whatever reason, facing trauma at home, maybe overworked, burnout. What are some policies that have been helpful to you or that you've seen in organizations? Either policies or outlets that allow people to take advantage of what they need.
We've seen a lot of shifting away from the typical traditional, what I call funeral leave, to more compassionate bereavement leave. So that's something we really advocate for. Different cultures do observe the journey in different ways, and so there are a lot of families that aren't going to need to have ceremonial time for a year. So we've really encouraged people to talk about compassionate bereavement leave. I'm grateful to see, from a policy perspective, some good energy behind national paid family leave. We have lots of states are doing things, like Minnesota's got a new paid family leave, and other states around the country. But we're seeing the advocacy finally sort of coming to life in the way that we are creating policy across the country. We're one of obviously the lagging developed countries that does not support the well-being of our people. And that shows up every day in work. So things like more flexible family leaves, recovery leave, I think is very important. My dad's an alcoholic and he's been sober for 44 years. But we know that if he started drinking, that'd be it, right? So a family who needs recovery leave for themselves or another family member, I could go on and on, but there are so many ways that we could take care of people. Anybody who wants to brainstorm up really.
I think your question was how to identify policy or understand what's working, what's not.
Please.
I think there's real easy solution. Just ask the employees what's working, what's not. And that's a conversation that can be scary for leaders because you're like, well, I got a really good package. It's shiny, it does everything that we need it to. But you find the gaps by having conversation with your teams and understanding what is the flexibility that's missing that we need to.
I agree totally, and I think having those surveys, focus groups, like really engaging and asking them, because sometimes you, like you were saying, it's so true, you think that you hit the mark and you get all this work and you recognize, you send out a survey and maybe ask scaling questions on a scale from 1 to 5, you know, different metrics, and you get the feedback and recognize, oh, they don't like any of this. None of this is working. And so recognizing that, and also, you know, adding creative and engaging fun ways to get them to engage in these programs and recognize, you know, that these policies are for them. And what better way to do that than to ask them, you know, to collaborate directly with them, because then they feel seen, valued, and heard.
My favorite is asking somebody coming back from leave, like, you got a generous leave policy, how's it going? Well, it sucks because on day one, I'm expected to jump all the way back in, know exactly what I've missed,
Wow, that's so
and
cool.
there's no transition plan for me to like reacclimate or transition out to make sure that my stuff is covered. So there's gaps in all the spots.
Well, to Wendy's good point earlier, figure out what people are using. Like maybe you have a family leave policy, but nobody's actually been allowed to take family leave for the last 18 years. Like you don't have a one documented case of family leave, then you don't actually have a family leave policy. It didn't happen.
It's true.
It was a ghost.
It's true.
I mean, if we had simple policies that gave people permission to exercise at lunchtime, or no meetings from 12 to 1. And that, you know, they're simple, and then some simple ones like that get reversed. And we're down in the basement with our fitness teams, and they're going, what happened? Nobody's coming to class anymore. And eventually we ask our committee, and they're like, oh yeah, we don't have lunch anymore. There's no such thing as lunch hour anymore.
And just being mindful and respectful of their time. I know that we do lunch and learns, but the feedback that I used to get from my team was, well, that's not really my lunch. We have to do a training program during my lunch, are you kidding? And so recognizing that, oh, well, we need to factor in time for this and being creative and allow them to pick. Okay, maybe we have in person and online, you can do either one, you know, and not saying you have to be here for that and dictating it from that perspective.
Also, that might be compensable time for my HR compliance people out there. Lunch and learn that's not mandatory is paid work time.
I was thinking about
What's
lunch
the
and learn,
budget?
too.
Yeah, what's the budget for those? Does your budget for lunch and learn include paid time for your employees to be
Yep,
there?
there you go.
Yep.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, Amazon built a huge program at a huge fitness center, and in that culture, they didn't basically the step where they asked the employees what they needed, and this very expensive wellness program went because nobody would participate not on paid time. That wasn't the culture of that organization. Yeah. So it is important to align with your employees' values.
Yes,
You know, and
absolutely.
that helps you come up with an incentive as well, because they tell you what they need from you.
And, you know, that's a good point. What was just mentioned there about employees' values. Oftentimes organizations have their mission, their vision, their values in place already. Instead of trying to hit the mark and thinking that there's a mark that we can hit, this is an evolution that we have to ask ourselves, how do we continue to get better? Because where we are right now is not always the best place. There's always something that we can continue to tweak or shift or pivot towards that will allow this to be a better culture, to allow things like what was just mentioned there. So if I'm in leadership, I have to continually ask myself, what's next? What's better? What does better look like? So that I can strengthen the organization, strengthen the culture, strengthen the employees, ultimately strengthening outcomes.
I love that. Asking yourself what's better leads you to asking your people, for their insight. I want to build off of that. And what are we asking our people? So we talked about it from a policy structure standpoint. Let's get back into how they are actually doing. I'm thinking of like what are some of the best questions that we can ask people? Just opening a question and get them to share with us more. We already know that the foundation of trust has to be there, and we know that part. But just good questions that we can commonly ask, because oftentimes the routine of a good question, creates openness too. So one of the questions that come to mind for me that I like to ask people is, are you stuck? What are you stuck on? And that could be in any area. It could be with having a hard time with resources for a project, or I'm stuck with my confidence right now, I'm stuck with feeling overwhelmed, or whatever it may be. I'd like for you all to consider, like, from your leadership lens, when you're talking with people, leading people, what is a simple, tangible question or two that you like to ask people to understand how are they doing right now?
What does well-being mean to you? Sorry, I thought I saw you about to talk. No, we lead out with, for everyone, what does well-being mean to you? And the response tells us a lot of what we need to know about what they're in,
Yes.
what they're stuck in, and what they want to expand it to.
What does well-being mean to you?
What does well-being mean to you?
I like that. You really get to know people that way too. Their
Yeah,
perspective.
it's a magic question. You can have it now, you can borrow it.
I think that's good.
I like to ask, what are you passionate about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, you can have an employee that may be passionate about training, but they are doing data entry. And so how can you incorporate that into their work and set them up if they desire to be promoted, creating those opportunities for them. And so feeling stuck could be, I feel like I've been in the same position, but I don't know how do I move forward? And so asking those questions that can permeate and get them to thinking and brainstorming and letting them know, hey, let's work on this together. What's your end goal? What are you looking to do? What do you really want?
That's a powerful question, because every organization should be looking to maximize the potential of their people. And if you have someone that's not leveraging their gifts, what they're passionate about, they're not showing up as their best self, and they're probably not leaning in as much, and may not be showing up as happy, and it could be a snowball effect from that. So this is such a powerful question. Just ask what they're passionate about.
I think it's where you started, Tamara. What's your purpose? And are you getting that met here? And figuring out, like, what are we doing with our time? We got a limited amount of time, so let's make the best use of it that we can. So really understanding, what are we doing with ourselves, and being proud of that. Like, that's something I can take home and feel good about. Is to me the foundation of it.
It's good. It's good. Anyone else?
I love
know you have a library of questions.
Yeah, I know.
It's too many. I don't even know where to start. Actually, no, but I love the question, because one of the things that we try to do is how do we help leaders be also coaches,
Yes.
asking those powerful questions
Yes.
that will allow for the openness of their people. Right. One of the first ones that came to mind for me is, hey, what's keeping you up at night, personally or professionally?
Yes.
Right? But where does this start from a little bit? And as leaders, if you were like me, you were taught leadership back in the 80s and the 90s, and that was a do as I say, not as I do type of thing. Don't ask any questions, just do. But I think now we need to shift or pivot leadership development these days to, delegating effectively, empowering effectively, but then also knowing the strengths of our team to place them in the right positions, number one, but then also asking them, okay, I think you're in the right place. You telling me you're in the right place. When you're running into roadblocks, obstacles or hurdles, what's keeping you stuck? What's keeping you up at night? And how can I help you overcome that? Right? Yes, we're delegating to them, we're empowering, but we're also asking them, how can I support you better?
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And I think also asking, is there something else you would like to do? A skill set that you don't have, that you would like to.
What would you like to learn?
Exactly. And so, then setting up opportunities for that as well.
It's good stuff. So, when we think of emerging trends and where mental health at work, where's it going? How's it showing up? I'm thinking about all the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm thinking about corporate social responsibility, and now the environmental sustainability governance that's popping up, the ESG talk. From your perspective and your line of work, where do you see this conversation about mental health at work going? Is it trending in the right direction? Is it becoming more complicated? Let's open it up some.
Yes and yes.
All right, all right.
All of you.
Yeah, the conversation got loud as the pandemic came to be. And, you know, in our industry, the first thing I saw every company do was buy the Calm app and tell everybody they had it. Or some equivalent of that. Those are all well and good, except they learned that everybody puts the app on the back of their phone and forgets to use it. And so the trend is towards more personalized, in-person, get in the trenches and do it with them, help them find accountability. The trend is towards more just being realistic about how people are going to engage with things. You know, and some of that's hopeful too, but I'm seeing it and sensing it. And then is it getting more complicated? You know, yeah. And I'm glad that I'm not the leader in that position necessarily.
That's where ZZ comes in to just unpack everything and make it all good.
Yeah, she needs, but her organization too, they need to start at the top so that it is permission. It's actually completely off topic, but you know, observing the actors yesterday and experiencing from our side the number of people who now don't want to come back to work. They want to work fully remote, even though they only live a mile from the office. You know, some of what I observed them acting goes on in the workplace made me go, oh, that's why nobody wants to go back. Because, you know, being in those situations is stressful.
That's absolutely on topic, by the way. Absolutely. What else? Open question.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick. You said technology, environment, AI,
Yes.
right? And then now, many of us, when we start having that conversation around AI, we start like, oh my goodness, no, right? But how can we pivot that, and how do we stay ahead of that, utilizing it for even our mental health, self-care, for organizational perspectives, the balance, the harmony that we're looking to achieve? How can we utilize artificial intelligence from that perspective as well?
Absolutely. That's interesting. That could be a whole summit.
Oh,
Yes, I'd have to sit out there, but maybe I could ask a couple good questions.
Oh, I'm seeing some whiplash in the workplace. So we said that we cared so much and we created all this flexibility and we poured resources into some wellness initiatives. And now we're like, oops, but now we have to still pay rent in this building, and or we own this big giant building. We need to get people back here. And once you're back here, flexibility is different. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of resetting of norms happening that folks aren't necessarily equipped to navigate without some additional leadership development, coaching, that sort of thing. So I'm kind of on hold on the trends. I mean, we have clients that have hired social workers in their veterinary businesses. I was chatting with somebody about that. And a neat part is that, so they just hired their second social worker. They hired them to provide services to the people who lose their pets, or whose pets are not well. They're seeing them as family members, right? But they've opened up each of these individuals' time so that they can visit with employees 25% of the time. Yeah, so making mental health services and these supportive services available as a part, again, of the labor budget. Like, who do we have on the team that is here to care for our people? That's a trend that I would like to see take off.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait and see that
Yeah.
exact thing. Are we gonna keep this in
Maybe
mind?
we'll have coffee in a year.
Yeah, well, and I say this selfishly as
Yep.
the guy who holds the wellness office in my business. Like, is this gonna be permanently invested in? Or do we just get scrubbed when we're all used? Yeah, so I think there's absolutely a need for most workspaces to have permanent space, parallel to HR, parallel to operations. That's just coaching the heck out of things and keeping an eye to make sure we don't make the same mistakes we've done before.
And I think keeping those programs, you know, close and in alignment, you know, really shows that, oh, this is important. We're going to prioritize this as an organization, not, okay, like you said, when we're healed, or we got to this certain space that, oh, we no longer do this, you know?
If you're measuring it, when you're healed, it will show in the profits, in the bottom line.
Let's build off of that. If everyone could just think for a moment, just think of one good thing, or maybe two, that we measure. When you're going into an organization to assess how healthy they are as an organization, what two things come to mind for you that should be measured relative to wellness, well-being, employee engagement, and so on? What should be measured?
I have a foundational question I ask every place. It's that, does my manager or boss authentically care about me? And have them rate that. That gives a good pulse on a lot of things. And do I have tools to manage the stress or anxiety that I'm
So that's a leadership-based question. You're asking the leaders
across the board?
across the board.
I love how you phrased that question too, let me just share, because saying, like, of course you have stress at work. How, do you have the resources you need to, like, it's not do you have stress at work?
Right.
Like, of course you do. I love that.
Yes.
We measure turnover.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty, easy little acrobatic math that we do to look at how long people stay. And then, also just, looking at things like time to hire, how long does it take us to fill open positions? Because we know that when we hold these positions open, it creates tension and stress across the board. Yeah, sure, definitely those are two simple ones.
Exit interviews.
Oh, of course.
Can you talk more about as far as how that fits into the how you assess what happened?
Yeah.
How you get better?
Absolutely. Yeah, our team, actually, that's one of our major initiatives, because for some reason, folks are a lot more interested in talking to someone else than their
Yes.
boss about how it was to work there. Because they do want to maintain those relationships, so they like to have, what feels a little bit more neutral party, right, to support them. But yeah, we ask a series of questions that are typically values aligned. So of course we can offer folks like here are some exit interview questions. We try to align with the values and the mission and some of the goals. And a lot of the questions that I'm starting out with, right? Like, did I get the care I needed from my supervisor, and so on and so forth. We can ask all types of great questions, but then do we actually digest that information and do anything with it? So that's where, as HR consultants, we do the measurements. We try to contact everyone who leaves voluntarily, and we also touch base with people who leave involuntarily, which is not the average practice, but we believe that people are asked to leave for a lot of interesting reasons. So, but then digest that data on a monthly and quarterly basis, and then work with the leadership team to identify what trends we're seeing. Okay, we see these trends that are harmful or helpful within the organization. Who do we hire to bring in and do some executive coaching or some wellness programs? Who do we need to collaborate with on, additional coaching efforts? And then again, we're looking a year, 2 years in advance. What's the budget look like next year for that? What's the budget look like in the following year? We can't do everything today, but our team is telling us these are our priorities. Let's respond appropriately. And our team are the people that left. Those are still
Yes.
people from our team. We need to be focusing from a mental health perspective and otherwise on being companies that are great to be from.
Yes, thank you.
And once you gather that data, definitely ensuring that you have training that's aligned with those outcomes.
Yep.
Looking to see, do we need to shift some of the training initiatives that we have? What do we need to add, maybe take away that, and then measure, who's taking the training, what percentage of people are engaged? Do we need to,
Yes.
shift and pivot the training that we're having, make it more creative, make it more fun, identify team building activities to incorporate that in there as well. So all of those things can be added and helpful.
Love it, love it. Anyone else want to build on what they would measure?
Well, then, so we are one of the programs you would reach out to support the measurements that Nikki described. And then you're watching those measurements versus our engagement to see if it's making a difference. And further surveying, we'll do an aligned survey once a year, once every other year, which is, it's a survey that we've developed and that we curate based on the company itself. But then we also go through and literally interview one by one employees to get verbal input. Otherwise also known as target market research, because we want to know who our audience is and what programs to put out.
How often should you survey people to get a good feel? I've heard various answers. What do you go?
Various answers.
Yes.
It depends, right? So annually at least, I would say definitely annual. Because if I'm an employee and I'm getting these surveys coming too much, I'm going to start complaining about the surveys. So every other month is a survey.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Like what happened? What was the outcomes of
Those
that one?
results will be up next quarter.
And while surveys and assessments are great, I love the fact about the interview. There's nothing like that structured interview to be able to get below the surface a little bit, right? And yes, definitely for employees. What about middle managers who I believe have it hardest getting it from, having to focus on their employees, but then senior leadership, so they're right caught in the middle.
Yes.
Are we interviewing them to see how they're doing, what they need, and what support they need to support their people, right? So, very late.
Yes. We could unpack that one for a long time. Middle managers often, they get the finger pointed at them,
Yeah.
for not cascading the executive priorities the right way or not connecting enough with people, but yet we often neglect that they're just kind of bottlenecked to everything. So, Azizi, that might be another session. We get together on that one too. But as we get into the last phase of our conversation, I've really been enjoying it. Thank you all so much for opening up the way that you have. Maybe there was something top of mind that you wanted to share. Some points or fact or something about you or your organization that you wanted to make sure that you presented today. You shared. Is there anything that you didn't unpack in that you would like?
I would just say the importance of training, really. I think a lot of times, a lot of focus is placed on so many other things, and then the coaching and the training, is not always at the forefront, but the expectation is. And so it just doesn't really work that way. If you're not training and coaching someone, in these spaces, then how are they able to pivot? How can they shift? How can they learn? How can they grow? And build from that space, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally,
Yes.
spiritually, whatever, just being able to do that
Yes.
from that space.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there may be some questions that you have of each other, or that someone in the audience may have. We'd definitely like to open it up to make this a full, inclusive conversation all the way around.
I think they need to start talking. They seem a little sleepy. Sorry, guys. It gets cold sitting out there too. Now with the lights, feel like it's easy wherever she went.
Questions? Any questions come top of mind for any of the panelists?
So I was just, hello, can you hear me? Oh, there we are. Great discussion. This has been a phenomenal panel. One question that came to me was, can you talk about anyone on stage of a case study in which you worked with an organization or corporation, provided your program, and what was the experience working with them, and then the outcome that they received working with you?
There's so much to do. I can start. So at HR Answers, we provide scalable HR services for small businesses, and so that might look like an HR audit for a small business. And so we are traditional HR experts, so we focus first on compliance with rules and regulations. We help write policies that align with vision and values, and then from there we coach and support organizational leaders to implement the things that we talked about. And so in the work that we've been doing over the years, I can think of an example specifically where we were helping a growing psychotherapy practice realign so that they could expand into another location. And so through the work that we did, again, I am an HR person. That's what we do, right? So like my operating system is like, let's get compliance out of the way so we can do the good stuff. So through building out this HR infrastructure and ecosystem, they were able to sort of unleash their capacity beyond that. So having this work put out of the way and tucked in and put to bed accessible and reliable, they felt then free to create the business that they were dreaming of, create the workplace that